The Monk and the Simple Path, a Zen story about the simplicity of life. In a world where we accumulate years and experiences, where worries seem to multiply with each passing decade, there exists an ancient truth that many of us have forgotten. Life is simple when we stop complicating it. This Zen story invites you to walk beside a monk on his journey toward a deeper understanding of existence. Through his eyes, you will discover that the search for happiness does not require more, but less. That inner peace is not found in complexity, but in simplicity. And that, after so many years of seeking elaborate answers, the greatest wisdom lies in the simplest truths. If you've reached that stage of life where you long for more peace and less noise, more essence and less appearance, this story is for you. Allow yourself a few moments to breathe, to read slowly, and perhaps you'll find in these words a mirror of your own search. Chapter 1: The Weight of Complications. Monk Kenji had devoted 40 years of his life to studying ancient texts, to deep meditation, and to the meticulous analysis of every Buddhist teaching. His cell was filled with manuscripts, his mind saturated with theories, and his heart, ironically, empty of inner peace. Each morning he rose before dawn to perform elaborate rituals he had perfected over the years. He prepared tea with exactly 27 movements, meditated using 5 different techniques, and reflected on 17 spiritual principles before breakfast. The simplicity of living had become a labyrinth of his own making. His disciples admired his dedication but noticed something strange. The more knowledge the master accumulated, the less serenity he radiated. The Zen wisdom he sought seemed to drift further away with every new book he studied, every new practice he added to his routine. One day, the abbot of the monastery summoned him. The elderly master, 80 years old and calm as a still lake, looked at Kenji with eyes that saw beyond appearances. "You have walked far," said the abbot. "But have you arrived anywhere?" Chapter 2: The Encounter with Simplicity. The abbot sent Kenji to a remote village with a single instruction. Observe how simple people live and learn what books cannot teach you. In the village, Kenji met a 70-year-old woman named Yuki, who lived in a small cottage surrounded by a garden. She rose with the sun, watered her plants, prepared simple green tea, and spent her afternoons sitting on her porch watching the clouds drift by. "Don't you study the scriptures?" Kenji asked, puzzled. "What for?" Yuki replied with a smile. "The tree doesn't read about how to grow, it simply grows. The river doesn't study how to flow, it simply flows. Life is simple when you stop asking how to live it and just live it." Kenji spent weeks observing Yuki. There were no complicated routines or elaborate theories, only presence, mindfulness in every daily act, and a deep peace radiating from her being. Her happiness did not come from knowing much, but from complicating little. The simplicity Yuki embodied was more powerful than all the philosophical treatises Kenji had memorized. Chapter 3: Unlearning What Was Learned. Back at the monastery, Kenji began a process he had never imagined necessary: unlearning. He started questioning every complex habit he had built over the years. Did he really need 27 movements to prepare tea? Wasn't it enough to heat the water, pour it over the leaves, and drink with awareness? Why had he turned meditation into an elaborate technique when its essence was simply to sit and observe? His fellow monks looked at him strangely as he simplified his practices. "You've lost your rigor," some said. But Kenji noticed something extraordinary. For the first time in decades, he felt genuine inner peace. Zen wisdom began revealing itself not in the complexity of rituals, but in the purity of simple intention. Each act, stripped of unnecessary ornamentation, regained its original meaning. One day, as he swept the garden without thinking about the correct sweeping technique, Kenji understood. He had spent 40 years seeking enlightenment in complicated places, when it had always been present in the simple act of sweeping with full attention. Chapter 4. The Traps of the Mind. The process of simplifying was not easy. Kenji's mind constantly resisted, suggesting new ways to do simplicity correctly, which was paradoxical in itself. How can I be sure I'm being simple the right way? He wondered, caught in the same pattern as always, complicating what was simple. He remembered Yuki's words, "Life is simple. Don't complicate it." There was no technique for being simple. One only needed to stop adding unnecessary layers of thought to every action. Kenji identified the mental traps that had stolen his peace for years. Overthinking before acting, seeking the perfect way to do ordinary things, accumulating knowledge without applying basic wisdom, comparing himself to others on their spiritual paths, creating problems where none existed. At 52 years old, Kenji learned something that children know naturally. Happiness lies in doing things without the weight of 1,000 thoughts about how they should be done. The tranquility he sought did not require extraordinary effort, only letting go of unnecessary effort. Chapter 5. The Art of Letting Go. Kenji began applying a revolutionary principle in his life. If something didn't bring peace or purpose, it had to be released. He started with the physical. Of the hundreds of manuscripts in his cell, he kept only 3 that truly touched his heart. The rest he donated to the monastery library. His space filled with light and air, and so did his mind. Then he simplified his routines. He let go of practices he had adopted merely because that's how it's done, or because other masters recommended them. He kept only what resonated with his inner truth. His days became shorter but infinitely more meaningful. The hardest part was letting go of expectations, the image of what a perfect Zen master should be, the need to impress others with his knowledge, the desire to reach extraordinary spiritual states. Freeing himself from these mental burdens, he discovered a lightness he had never known. His disciples noticed the change. Kenji no longer spoke in complex terms or constantly quoted ancient texts. His teachings were direct, clear, practical. Zen wisdom flowed through him effortlessly, like water finding its way. "Master," a young monk asked, "how did you achieve such inner peace?" "By stopping the search," Kenji replied simply. Chapter 6. The Beauty of the Everyday. With his life simplified, Kenji began noticing details that had long escaped him in his mental rush to evolve spiritually. The real flavor of green tea when drunk with no other thought. The sound of the wind through bamboo when the mind is silent. The deep gratitude that arises when walking barefoot on the cool morning earth. True happiness wasn't found in extraordinary experiences, but in the ability to be fully present in ordinary ones. Washing dishes became meditation. Walking to the well for water became spiritual practice. Sleeping was simply sleeping, without theories about conscious rest. Kenji realized that for decades he had sought enlightenment as if it were something distant and complex, when in truth it was as simple as being fully alive in every moment. Adding nothing, removing nothing. One day, as he watched a spider weave its web with natural precision, he thought, "She never studied in a monastery, never read sacred texts, and yet she knows exactly what to do." Life is simple when you trust your essential nature. Simplicity was not ignorance or lack of depth. It was depth itself, undisguised and unadorned. Chapter 7. Teaching without complication. As a teacher, Kenji completely transformed his way of guiding others. He no longer overwhelmed his students with hundreds of concepts and practices. Instead, he taught only the essentials. Breathe consciously, observe without judgment, act with presence, rest when you're tired, eat when you're hungry, be kind to yourself. Life is simple. The younger students sometimes grew frustrated. "Is that all?" they asked, expecting more elaborate formulas. That's all, Kenji confirmed. But it will take years to truly understand, because your mind will want to complicate it. You'll want to add techniques, seek higher levels, build complex systems. And that's fine, it's part of the journey. Just remember to return to this. Life is simple, don't complicate it. The older students, those who like him had spent decades on the spiritual path, understood deeply. Many wept upon hearing these simple words, realizing how many years they had lost in the mental labyrinths of their own making. The Zen wisdom Kenji now shared did not impress through complexity. It touched hearts through naked truth. The peace he radiated was contagious, not because he followed 1,000 rules, but because he had stopped inventing them. Chapter 8. The circle closes. At 60, Kenji decided to make a pilgrimage to visit Yuki once more, the woman who had shown him the way of simplicity. He found her in the same place, sitting on her porch, now 80 years old with an even brighter smile. "You've returned," said Yuki without surprise. "I've come to thank you," replied Kenji, "and to tell you that I finally understand." "What did you understand?" "That life is simple, that all the knowledge I accumulated was valuable, but it wasn't wisdom until I learned to let it go. That happiness doesn't lie in achieving something grand, but in living each moment with simplicity and presence." Yuki nodded. "And now that you know this, what will you do?" "The same as always," said Kenji, "but without complicating it. I'll sweep, meditate, teach, walk. Only now I'll do it with the understanding that these simple actions are enough. They are complete in themselves." They spent the afternoon in shared silence, drinking green tea, watching the sun descend, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. There was no need for words. Everything important had already been said. As they said goodbye, Yuki handed him a smooth river stone. "To remind you," she said, "when life feels complicated, hold this stone. It has no worries, no goals, no conflicts. It simply is. And that's enough." Kenji returned to the monastery with the stone in his pocket and a quiet smile on his face. He had traveled far, studied much, searched deeply, and in the end, the greatest truth was also the simplest. Life is simple when you stop complicating it. In his remaining years, Kenji lived by this teaching. He wrote no elaborate treatises on simplicity. It would have been ironic. He simply lived each day fully, radiating the peace that comes from being in harmony with what truly matters. And when students asked him for the secret to his serenity, he pointed to the falling leaves of autumn. "Look," he would say, "they don't cling to the branch. They don't ask whether they're falling correctly. They simply fall, trusting the natural process of life. That simple, that perfect. The end." In simplicity lies the ultimate sophistication, not in doing more, but in needing less, not in knowing everything, but in understanding what truly matters. Life invites you every day to dance with it in the simplest way, by being present, being kind, and letting go of the unnecessary. And that, dear reader, is enough.